I never thought money would be the thing that made me question my engagement. Not cheating, not lies, not betrayal, just watching the person I loved slowly stop caring about life, about us, and eventually about our future together. I'm 26, and until last year, I was engaged to who I believed was the most driven man I'd ever met. I'll call him Daniel. He was 28, the youngest of 4 siblings, and for most of his life he felt like he had something to prove. His older siblings were all wildly successful. Top universities, impressive careers, the kind of family accomplishments that get brought up at every holiday dinner. Daniel used to feel like the underachiever. But then, over the last few years, something clicked. He lost a significant amount of weight, landed a high-paying research job, built a solid routine, made friends, and finally earned his PhD. When he proposed to me, his parents were beyond proud. For the first time, Daniel felt like he had made it. 2 weeks later, everything collapsed. Daniel's parents were killed in a sudden car accident. One day, we were planning a wedding. The next, we were choosing black clothes and canceling catering tastings. In the immediate aftermath, his siblings stepped in to handle logistics. Daniel told me he needed space, just a couple of weeks to clear his head. He rented a small cabin in the mountains, saying he needed silence to process everything. I didn't know what the right response was, so I supported him. When he came back, he was different. He sat me down and said he'd spent those 2 weeks trying to reset himself mentally. He'd read books, watched videos, and convinced himself that extreme self-experimentation would help him reach clarity. I won't get into details, but whatever he did out there, it broke something instead of fixing it. Months passed, and the man who used to wake up early, track goals, and talk excitedly about the future slowly disappeared. Daniel stopped exercising. The weight came back. He started avoiding mirrors, then avoiding people. His worldview turned dark and cynical. Every conversation ended with some version of, "None of this matters anyway." We tried everything: individual therapy, couples counseling, grief support. He went, technically, but emotionally, he checked out. Every suggestion was met with sarcasm. Every attempt at help was dismissed because he was convinced he'd already figured out the truth about life. The wedding was postponed, then quietly canceled. Partly because his parents wouldn't be there, but mostly because nothing felt stable enough to plan a future. That's when the money problem started creeping in. I lost my job during a company restructuring. It took me 2 months to find another one. Those were the most stressful weeks of my life. Rent, groceries, bills, everything suddenly felt fragile. Daniel barely reacted. He didn't ask where I was applying. He didn't check in when I got interviews. Even after I found a new job, he never asked where I worked. Not once. I was carrying the emotional weight, the financial anxiety, and the responsibility of holding our life together, alone. What hurt the most wasn't the lack of romance. It was the absence of partnership. We barely talked. Physical intimacy almost disappeared. When my parents visited, Daniel would either retreat to another room or leave the house entirely, overwhelmed by the reminder that other families still existed. I started feeling something I never expected: resentment. We tried working out together again, hoping it would help us both. Instead, I felt anger building inside me, anger that I didn't recognize myself for feeling. I hated that I was becoming someone who judged him, who felt emotionally and physically disconnected from the man I once admired. I felt cruel for thinking it, but I was exhausted. At some point, I realized I wasn't just supporting someone through grief anymore. I was financially and emotionally stabilizing a person who had completely given up on participating in life. Love turned into obligation. Empathy turned into burnout. I asked myself a question that scared me. If nothing changes, can I live like this for the next 10 years? I still love Daniel. That's the hardest part. Love doesn't disappear just because someone stops showing up. But here's the truth I had to face. Grief explains behavior. but it doesn't excuse abandoning responsibility forever. A relationship can survive tragedy. It cannot survive one person carrying everything indefinitely. You can offer support, therapy, patience, and understanding, but you cannot force someone to choose life again. At some point, staying stops being compassion and starts becoming self-erasure. I haven't fully decided what comes next, but I've learned this. Loving someone doesn't mean destroying yourself to keep them afloat. Sometimes the hardest breakup isn't caused by betrayal, it's caused by watching someone fade away while you're still standing, still paying the bills, still hoping they'll come back to you. I never expected a simple game night idea to reveal a problem in my marriage that I'd been quietly ignoring for years. My husband, Mark, and I have been together for almost 9 years and married for 5. From the outside, our life looks solid. A comfortable home, shared finances, steady routines, the kind of marriage people assume is doing fine. Mark is confident and successful. He's social, opinionated, and very sure of himself. I've always told myself those were strengths. When his mother came to visit for a week, I needed a break. I reached out to my best friend, Lauren, and suggested a game night at our house. I love board games and trivia. Mark has never enjoyed them, but I hoped that with a group it wouldn't matter. Lauren hesitated before agreeing. Then she told me something I wasn't prepared to hear. She said she would come alone. No husband, no extra friends. At first I assumed it was scheduling. But Lauren decided to be honest. She told me that her husband and several of their friends feel uncomfortable around Mark. At a recent Friendsgiving, Mark had made dismissive comments about Lauren's friends while talking to her husband. Nothing loud or aggressive, just subtle judgments. Enough that after we left, people talked about it. They said the energy shifted whenever he spoke. Some even said they felt bad for me. Then Lauren mentioned one moment that stayed with her. During the party, I asked Mark if he'd play a game with me, just one round. He laughed and said no, the same way he always does. He's told me many times that games are childish and a waste of time. I didn't push it, but from the outside, it looked different. It looked like I was asking for something small, and he couldn't meet me halfway. People noticed. The room felt awkward. The fun energy faded. That's when I realized how normal this had become to me. Lauren also admitted something she'd been holding back for years. She's noticed Mark talking over me, correcting me in public, or shutting conversations down when I disagree. She never said anything because she didn't want to interfere in my marriage. Apparently, this wasn't invisible. At home, those patterns are even clearer. If I disagree with Mark, especially about money, the conversation ends quickly. He earns more than I do, and even though our finances are shared, his opinion usually becomes final. Vacations, big purchases, even hosting friends often depend on whether it makes sense to him. We've been in couples counseling on and off for years. We're back in it again now. I'm also in individual therapy, trying to understand why I shrink so easily to keep the peace. What hurts the most isn't that people feel uncomfortable around my husband. It's realizing they see something I've been explaining away for a long time. Mark isn't cruel. He doesn't yell. He doesn't explode. He's just immovable. And when one person consistently takes up all the emotional and financial space, the other slowly learns how to disappear. I'm afraid to bring this up. Afraid he'll get defensive. Afraid he'll say Lauren is exaggerating or worse, ask me to distance myself from her. That would force me to choose between my marriage and my support system. I'm starting to understand that conflict doesn't always look like shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it looks like silence, like agreeing when you don't agree, like convincing yourself that being low maintenance is the same as being happy. For the first time, I'm asking myself a question I've avoided for years. If everyone else can see me bending, why have I been pretending I'm standing just fine? Maybe love isn't just about staying. Maybe it's about being honest about the cost of staying exactly the same. And maybe the hardest part of a marriage isn't leaving. but finally taking up the space you've been giving away. The most shocking part wasn't that my dad cheated on my mom. It was realizing he pulled my younger brothers into it. And now, they're the ones being punished. I recently found out my dad has been cheating on my mom. I don't know how long it's been going on or how many times it's happened. What I do know is that there was at least one ongoing situation that my younger brothers knew about. They were aware that our dad had a close female friend. They say they didn't understand it was an affair, just something that felt off. My dad asked them not to say anything. They're kids, and they listened. When my mom found out, everything exploded.
My mom was furious, and I understand why. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and blindsided by the person she trusted most. But instead of directing all of that anger toward my dad, she turned it on my brothers. She called them liars. She called them cowards. Then she told them she wanted nothing to do with them. I watched my younger brothers shut down in real time. I won't lie. Part of me was angry at them too at first. I kept thinking, why didn't you say something? But the more I thought about it, the more unfair that felt. They were put in an impossible position. They were afraid of going against our dad, afraid of blowing up the family, afraid of being the reason everything fell apart. And now, somehow, they're being treated like the villains. They're hurt, confused, and carrying guilt that was never theirs to begin with. What makes this even harder is my mom's personality. She's stubborn, proud. Once she decides she's done with someone, it's like a wall comes down. I don't even know where to start with her. I want to protect my brothers, but I don't want to invalidate my mom's pain. At the same time, I can't accept that children are being punished for something an adult did, especially when that adult manipulated them into silence. My dad is the only one who should be shunned here. He cheated, he lied, and worst of all, he used his own kids as shields. I keep wondering if he thought this was some twisted boys will be boys situation, like involving them made it harmless. But all it did was scar them emotionally and destroy trust on every level. And now I'm stuck in the middle, try to hold together people who are all bleeding in different ways. The hardest part is knowing this isn't really my responsibility, but feel like I can't walk away. My brothers need reassurance that they weren't wrong for being scared, that adults failed them, not the other way around. My mom needs time, but she also needs to remember who actually broke her trust and who didn't. I'm learning that betrayal doesn't just damage marriages. It ripples outward. It forces kids to grow up too fast. It turns siblings into mediators. And it leaves everyone questioning where loyalty is supposed to land. I don't have a perfect solution, but I do know this. Holding children accountable for an adult's deception only creates more damage. And if healing is ever going to happen, the blame has to stop landing on the smallest shoulders in the room. Sometimes the real fallout of cheating isn't just between two spouses. It's the family that's left trying to survive the wreckage.